This story is titled, My Fiancé's Ape Had the Nerve to Send Me Invitation Cards to Her Gender Reveal Party. I was so enraged that I showed up with evidence that left everyone speechless. Hey everyone, I'm Lily, 33 years old, and until 6 months ago, I thought I had everything figured out. My life looked perfect from the outside. A beautiful house in suburban San Diego, a successful career as a real estate agent, and what I believed was a rock-solid marriage to David, who's 37. We met in college and dated for 4 years before tying the knot. We've been married for 8 years now. David works as a corporate attorney at one of the biggest firms in California, and he's always been ambitious, working long hours and attending countless networking events. I supported his career completely, even when it meant spending many evenings alone. That's where Natalie enters the story. She's 29 and started as a junior associate at David's firm about a year ago. I first met her at the company's Christmas party. She seemed sweet, almost shy, with perfectly styled brunette hair and designer dresses that probably cost more than my monthly mortgage payment. I remember feeling a slight twinge of unease when I saw how David's eyes followed her across the room that night, but I pushed the feeling away. After all, I trusted my husband completely. We had been trying for a baby for the past 3 years, and were dealing with the emotional roller coaster of fertility treatments together. Or so I thought. Looking back now, I should have noticed the signs. The late-night meetings that became more frequent, the new cologne he started wearing, the way he became protective of his phone. But when you're in love with someone, you can be blind to the most obvious red flags. I was too busy focusing on our future, picking out names for our future children, and planning the nursery in my head. Little did I know that while I was injecting myself with hormones and tracking my ovulation cycles, my husband was starting a new life with someone else. Someone who would soon have the one thing I wanted more than anything in the world. Fate has a funny way of revealing the truth. In my case, it came in the form of a beautifully embossed baby shower invitation delivered to my mailbox on a sunny Wednesday morning. The invitation sat on my kitchen counter for 3 days. I couldn't bring myself to open it. The envelope was addressed to Mrs. Lily Mitchell, written in elegant calligraphy that probably cost a small fortune. When I finally tore it open, my hands were shaking so badly I nearly dropped it. The invitation was for a baby shower celebrating baby boy Cooper, with Natalie's name prominently displayed as the mother-to-be. No father's name was mentioned, but my gut told me everything I needed to know. I spent the next few days piecing together the timeline in my head. The shower was scheduled for exactly 1 month away, which meant Natalie was probably around 7 months pregnant. 7 months. While I was going through my 3rd failed IVF cycle in February, crying myself to sleep and blaming my own body for failing me, my husband was creating life with someone else. I needed proof before I could confront either of them. I'm not normally the type of person who snoops, but desperate times call for desperate measures. While David was in the shower one morning, I used his fingerprint to unlock his phone, something I'd never done before in our entire marriage. What I found made me physically ill. There were hundreds of text messages between him and Natalie dating back to last summer. Pictures of ultrasound appointments. Messages about picking out baby names. David suggesting they name their son after his grandfather Thomas, the same name he and I had chosen years ago for our future son. But the most devastating discovery wasn't the affair itself. It was learning that everyone at David's firm knew about it. The messages revealed how they'd been living practically openly as a couple at work events while I sat at home, trusting and oblivious. Some of their colleagues had even helped them keep their secret from me, creating fake work events and meetings so they could spend time together. Through my tears, I noticed something peculiar about the baby shower invitation. It wasn't just sent to me by accident. Natalie had specifically requested my address from David, according to their messages. She wanted me there. This wasn't just an oversight. It was a power play. She was flaunting her pregnancy, her fertility, her victory over me. And in that moment, as I sat on my kitchen floor surrounded by the evidence of my husband's betrayal, something inside me shifted. The devastated wife was replaced by someone else, someone who refused to be humiliated any longer. I picked up my phone and RSVP'd to the shower with a simple, "Yes, I'd be delighted to attend." The next 3 weeks were the most calculated of my life. I maintained perfect normalcy at home, playing the role of the unsuspecting wife. I even started leaving my fertility medication out on display, letting David think I was still committed to our baby dreams. Meanwhile, I was meticulously gathering evidence and forming a plan that would make both of them regret ever crossing me. I hired a private investigator named Greg, who was 46 and specialized in infidelity cases. He was expensive, but my separate savings account, the one David didn't know about, could handle it. Within days, Greg had compiled a comprehensive file that made my evidence look like child's play. There were hotel receipts, restaurant bills, and time-stamped photos of them together during all those late meetings. But the crown jewel was the paper trail of the luxury condo David had secretly purchased 3 months ago in both his and Natalie's names. The betrayal went deeper than I'd imagined. David had been systematically moving money from our joint accounts into a separate one, preparing for his new life. He'd used part of my inheritance money my grandmother had left specifically to help us start a family, as a down payment on their love nest. The same grandmother who'd made him promise on her deathbed to take care of me. I also discovered that Natalie wasn't as innocent as she appeared. Through some discreet conversations with her former colleague Julia, who was 31 and worked at her previous firm in Chicago, I learned that this wasn't the first time she'd set her sights on a married partner. She had a pattern of pursuing successful married men, though this was the first time she'd taken it this far. Julia even sent me screenshots of Natalie bragging about how easy it was to manipulate David, calling me the barren wife in her messages to friends. Everything was falling into place for my plan, but I needed to maintain my composure. I bought a new dress for the shower, a sophisticated cream-colored ensemble that made me look polished and put together. I wanted to look like someone who couldn't possibly be falling apart inside. I started getting my nails done at the same salon Natalie frequented, carefully dropping hints about how excited I was for the upcoming shower. Word got back to her through the gossiping nail technicians. I could tell from David's tense behavior that my apparent enthusiasm was making them both nervous. Good. They should be. The week before the shower, I made my final preparations. I met with Catherine, a 41-year-old who happened to be the best divorce attorney in San Diego. I secretly forwarded her all the evidence I'd gathered. She was impressed with my thoroughness and assured me that David's career would take a significant hit once the partners learned how he'd misused client trust accounts to fund his affair. Apparently, some of those mysterious transfers weren't just from our personal accounts. I also had a long conversation with David's mother, Vivian, who was 63. She had always treated me like a daughter, and I knew she deserved to hear the truth from me rather than through gossip. When I showed her the evidence, including the ultrasound photos and the condo paperwork, she broke down crying. She revealed something that made my blood run cold. David had recently asked her for his grandmother's antique diamond ring, claiming he wanted to have it resized for me as an anniversary gift. The ring that had been in their family for 3 generations was actually intended for Natalie. The night before the shower, I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about all the times David had held me while I cried after failed pregnancy tests, how he promised we would have our family one day, all while knowing he was expecting a child with someone else. I thought about Natalie, who had sat across from me at company dinners, smiling sympathetically when the topic of children came up, knowing she was carrying my husband's baby. I spent hours putting together the perfect gift. On the surface, it looked like an elaborate baby basket, wrapped in expensive blue paper with a silver bow. I'd even asked the woman at the baby boutique to make it extra special, not letting on that its contents would destroy lives rather than celebrate new life. Inside was a carefully curated collection of evidence, photos, bank statements, hotel receipts, and screenshots, all beautifully arranged among designer baby items. At the very bottom lay a copy of my divorce petition, printed on the same expensive paper as the shower invitations. The final touch was the card, which I'd spent days perfecting. It needed to look completely innocent to anyone who might see it while sending a clear message to the parents-to-be. I wrote a heartfelt message about new beginnings and family heritage, ending with a pointed reference to my grandmother's inheritance and a family ring that would never make it to Natalie's finger. The day of the shower arrived. It was exactly the kind of over-the-top event I'd expected. Natalie had rented out the garden room at the Four Seasons in La Jolla, with elaborate flower arrangements and a champagne fountain that seemed to mock those of us who actually had to work for a living. The guest list was a who's who of the legal community's wives and female attorneys, about 30 women in total, many of whom had watched me struggle with infertility over the years. I arrived precisely 15 minutes late, enough to make an entrance, but not so late as to seem rude. The look on Natalie's face when I walked in was priceless. She was wearing a tight pink dress that showed off her pregnant belly, but her confident smile faltered when she saw me. I could tell she hadn't actually expected me to come. She'd sent the invitation as a power move, thinking I would either decline or make a scene. Instead, here I was, looking elegant and composed, carrying an enormous gift basket that drew everyone's attention. I recognized most of the faces in the room. Women who had been to dinner parties at my house, who had hugged me at fertility fundraisers, who had sent me encouraging texts after each failed IVF attempt. Now they were all here, celebrating the woman who had destroyed my marriage. Some looked uncomfortable when they saw me. Others quickly became fascinated with their phones or champagne glasses. Only Megan, my closest friend from the firm's wives circle who was also 33, had the decency to look angry on my behalf. The event planner, clearly unaware of the drama unfolding, directed me to place my gift on a table, already groaning with expensive presents. I positioned mine front and center, making sure the card was prominently displayed. Then I took my seat at a table near the front, close enough to have a perfect view of Natalie during the gift opening ceremony that was scheduled to begin in an hour. As I sipped my sparkling water and made polite small talk, I watched Natalie circulate through the room. She kept glancing nervously in my direction, probably wondering what I was doing there, why I was so calm, and what I had planned. I noticed she kept checking her phone, no doubt messaging David about my unexpected appearance. I imagined him sitting in his office, sweating through his expensive suit, wondering what his wife was doing at his mistress's baby shower. The thought made me smile into my glass. The gift opening ceremony started right on schedule. I watched as Natalie opened present after present: designer baby clothes, a top-of-the-line stroller that cost more than my first car, and enough baby gear to fill a small boutique. With each gift, her initial nervousness seemed to fade, replaced by the smug satisfaction I'd come to recognize from her social media posts. She probably thought I'd brought something harmless, trying to save face. Then came the moment I'd been waiting for. The event planner Sophia, who was 29, handed Natalie my elaborately wrapped basket, commenting on its impressive size and presentation. The room fell silent as Natalie began carefully removing the wrapping paper. I could see her hands trembling slightly as she lifted the lid, probably wondering if I'd done something dramatic like fill it with photos of her and David. The top layer looked perfectly innocent, an assortment of high-end baby items I had selected with surgical precision. There was a blue cashmere blanket from the same boutique where she had registered, matching the one David had bought her during their secret shopping trip in March. A silver baby rattle identical to the one in their private photos together. A collection of children's books about fathers and sons that David had specifically mentioned wanting to read to their baby in their text messages. Natalie's face grew increasingly pale as she removed each item, recognizing the significance that only she would understand. But it was when she reached the middle layer that everything changed. Her perfectly manicured hands froze as she touched the first envelope. The room was still focused on what appeared to be a normal gift opening, but I could see the exact moment realization hit her. She knew what she was about to uncover. The color drained from her face as she quickly tried to close the basket, but it was too late. Megan, who was helping her display the gifts, had already pulled out one of the envelopes, assuming it contained a gift card. Instead, she found herself holding a stack of hotel receipts and a photograph that made her gasp audibly. The sound drew everyone's attention, and in that perfect moment of chaos, I calmly stood up, smoothed my dress, and prepared to deliver the final blow. The room erupted in chaos. Photos and documents started spilling out of the basket as Natalie desperately tried to contain them, but it was like watching a dam break. Impossible to stop once it started. Papers scattered across the gift table, each one telling its own damning story. Someone picked up a bank statement and gasped at the amount. Another found the condo purchase agreement. The ultrasound photos dated during my last IVF cycle made their way through the crowd of shocked guests. Natalie's mother, Carolyn, who was 55 and had been beaming with pride all afternoon, snatched up one of the papers. It was a screenshot of Natalie's messages mocking my infertility struggles. Carolyn had been one of the firm's paralegals for 20 years, respected by everyone, and I knew from office gossip that she'd been thrilled about her first grandchild. Now she was staring at proof that her daughter had deliberately destroyed a marriage. I remained standing, calm and poised, as Natalie's perfect world crumbled around her. Her mascara was running now, her hands shaking as she tried to gather the evidence of her betrayal. The other guests were either frozen in shock or whispering furiously to each other. Megan had moved to stand beside me, her hand on my arm in silent support. The event planner looked like she wanted to sink into the floor. Then my phone buzzed right on cue. Catherine had just filed the divorce papers electronically. A second later, Natalie's phone started ringing. David, no doubt having received the court notification. She ignored the call, but her phone kept lighting up with message after message. I knew exactly what those messages said because I'd seen them in my mind 1,000 times while planning this moment. In the midst of this chaos, I pulled out one final envelope from my purse. This one contained a letter from the State Bar Association acknowledging receipt of my detailed complaint about David's misuse of client trust accounts to finance his affair. I placed it on top of the scattered evidence and finally broke my silence. In a voice that carried across the now silent room, I thanked Natalie for inviting me to her shower. After all, I said, it had given me the perfect opportunity to give them both exactly what they deserved. What happened next was both satisfying and surreal. Natalie's sister Bethany, who was 26 and had been taking videos of the gift opening for their special memories, was still recording. She captured everything: the evidence, the reactions, Natalie's breakdown, before Carolyn forcefully made her stop. That video would later become crucial evidence in both the divorce proceedings and the bar investigation. David burst into the Four Seasons 20 minutes later, his tie askew and face red with panic. He clearly rushed over from his office downtown, but he was too late. By then, most of the guests had left, taking with them not just their expensive gifts, but also photos of the evidence on their phones. The San Diego legal community isn't that large, and news travels fast. His reputation was already in free fall. He found Natalie sitting in a chair, surrounded by scattered evidence and torn wrapping paper, with only her mother and the event planner still trying to salvage what they could of the situation. The look on his face when he saw me, still standing there, composed and unmoved by his dramatic entrance, was something I'll never forget. He started to speak, probably to try to explain or manipulate the situation as he'd done so many times before, but I simply held up my hand and shook my head. Vivian arrived just moments after David, having received my pre-arranged text alert. She walked straight past her son without a glance, took her family ring from her finger, the one that matched the ring David had planned to give Natalie, and placed it in my hand. The message was clear to everyone in the room. She was choosing me over her own son. She then turned to Natalie and delivered the kind of withering look that only a disappointed mother can give before linking her arm through mine and walking me out of the garden room. As we left, I could hear Natalie starting to cry, her sobs echoing off the expensive wallpaper of the five-star hotel she'd chosen to celebrate her stolen happiness. David was trying to call my name, but his voice was drowned out by Carolyn's angry tirade about how he had ruined her daughter's life. The event planner was frantically trying to clear the evidence away before the next party arrived to use the room. The aftermath was swift and far-reaching. By Monday morning, David had been placed on administrative leave pending an investigation. 3 of the firm's biggest clients, who were all women-owned businesses, pulled their accounts after hearing about what happened. The managing partners, trying to contain the damage, asked for his resignation by the end of the week. Natalie had already cleaned out her desk on Sunday night, knowing her position at the firm was untenable. The divorce proceedings went exactly as Catherine had predicted. With the overwhelming evidence of financial misconduct and the bar investigation looming, David agreed to my terms without a fight. I got the house, most of our assets, and a significant portion of his retirement account, though money wasn't really what I wanted. What I wanted was for them both to feel the same humiliation they had tried to inflict on me. Vivian insisted I keep her mother's ring, saying she'd rather sell it than see it on Natalie's finger. Instead, I donated it to a charity auction benefiting fertility treatments for low-income couples. It felt like the right way to honor my grandmother's memory and turn something painful into something hopeful. Last I heard, David and Natalie moved to Sacramento after the baby was born. Their relationship didn't survive the scandal. It turns out that when you build a relationship on lies and betrayal, it doesn't hold up well under pressure. David now works at a much smaller firm, his dreams of making partner crushed under the weight of his choices. Natalie struggled to find work in the legal field, her reputation following her even across state lines. As for me, I sold the house and moved to Los Angeles 6 months ago. I needed a fresh start, away from the whispers and sympathetic looks. I started my own real estate company, focusing on helping women find their dream homes after divorce. Megan moved here too after leaving her own cheating husband, and we've become even closer friends. She jokes that we should write a book about hosting revenge baby showers, but I think one was enough. The fertility doctors here say my chances of having a baby are actually better than they were before, now that I'm not living with the constant stress of an unfaithful husband. I started dating again, cautiously, but I'm in no rush. For the first time in years, I'm focusing on my own happiness rather than trying to create the perfect life with someone else. Sometimes the best revenge isn't just exposing the truth, it's living well after the dust settles.